All right. Hi everyone. Thanks for participating in the September APAC Scientific Forum. We have a very special guest here today from the Odyssey Vocabulary team, Anna. But before I hand over the floor to Anna so that she can give us a good session on the Odyssey vocabularies and how the community can contribute, I will go over a few surveys that are currently ongoing in the Odyssey community, including one from the global side and also one from the APAC side. So first things first on the ones on the survey that's going on from the APAC side. So for those of you who have been in the or previous APAC Scientific Forum calls, there was a survey conducted on areas of support that the community would be interested in. And based on the results from that previous survey, we found out that the community's interest is around, not a surprise, but it's around uniform data representation as well as data analytics. So currently, Mukesh and his team, Cindy specifically, has circulated a follow-up survey on deep diving into these two areas and for us to understand what specific topics within these areas that you guys will be interested in for us to host sessions during the APAC Scientific Forum. So the link to the survey is here. If I just show you guys what it looks like. So it's a Microsoft Office survey. So if you click on start, it'll give you a brief introduction of what the survey is about. This time we've specifically asked you to enter in your information so that we can get in touch with you in case we have any follow-up questions around the interest or specific questions that you have. So the survey might look a bit long, but it's pretty quick. It's more around clicking yes or no and entering in any free text that you want around any specific questions that you have. So your participation would be much appreciated as this will directly affect how future APAC scientific forums, the topics for future scientific forums. So the reason we have Anna here today is also because a lot of the community came back to us with questions around Odyssey vocabulary. So this is today's session is actually a kickoff of the follow-up of the survey. So we would greatly appreciate you guys participating in the survey during this month so that we can shape up future topics for future scientific forum meetings. So that's around the support areas follow-up survey. Moving on to the next survey. So as you guys have received some multiple notifications from the Odyssey APAC account, there is a global survey going on around what databases are available in the OMOP format already, but also what databases are currently being converted to the OMOP format. So this survey is actually, the main purpose of it is to update the Odyssey or Journey book. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with it, so I'll just show you briefly what it looks like. So there's a link here which will direct you to this specific book here. So it's a book that we release on an annual basis during the global symposium. And it's got a lot of content on where the community was during the. Oh, there you go. There, Mui is showing the actual booklet that's the book that's handed out during the symposium. So this is the 2022 version that you guys are seeing, but there is a 23 version that's being updated. And within this book, there is actually a section on the Odyssey data partners. So if you want your institution or your database to be included in this list, you need to fill out the survey on time. So the survey will close in September 8th. So today is actually probably your most safest bet on getting your responses submitted. So I highly encourage all of you here to get your databases on this list. We really want good representation of the APAC region, right? So let's show off how good we are and how enthusiastic we are about being part of the Odyssey community, right? So again, I'll share this link while Anna is doing her presentation, but I'll post the survey links in the chat so that you guys can have access to it directly even before we share the slides. So please, your participation is greatly appreciated. Let's hope we get more and more partners listed here to represent the APAC. Mui, do you have anything you want to add to what I just said? Or
Yes, fill out the survey, please. And if you, some of you guys might have already given the information to like the chapter leads, because we went through 2 different avenues. One was through the chapter leads and one is now through the community itself. It's okay to duplicate because we, on the back end, the OHDSI community will undupe the information, right? But it's best if you're not too sure, fill it out. If you don't remember if you filled it out before, fill it out. Okay, because we'll dedupe it in the back end, and we really want, you know, APAC here to be represented. I mean, yes, last year we had a lot. Actually, the year before there was also on here as well. So you'll find this pattern. Every year we collect these. And, you know, these are the books that comes with it. I do keep them, I save them. And I think last year we brought some, or this year we took some to the APAC symposium and gave it out. So we can also think about bringing more of these back to the APAC community. We'll steal a bunch from the Global Symposium people, we'll steal a bunch, right? And take it back to APAC if you guys are interested in the book as well. So any questions about the book? Fill it out, please, pretty please.
And so
right.
from a filling out perspective, it doesn't take too long and it's pretty straightforward. Right? It doesn't require detailed in-depth knowledge.
Right. So like, since we mentioned it, right, I'll just pop up the form here, guys. It's very straightforward. It's just like not even a scroll, right? Your email, your organization, name of your database, what country that database is representing, the number of patients, what type of data it is, and also whether or not you guys will be interested in participating in OHDSI studies. And there's also the option of being unsure, right? So if you're unsure whether you guys can participate in OHDSI studies or not, that's totally fine. There's the option of saying you're unsure. So it's easy.
And for the unique patients, you can round. Okay, if you don't really know, you can round it. 1.5 million, good enough. Okay, I don't think it's going to be a big difference between 1.5 to 1.48756, right? So
good point. Great. So yeah, guys, as Mui said, as I said, as Atif said, it's simple. Please participate. We really want APAC to be, you know, we want our influence to grow and grow, right? It's not it's a global effort, right? So please put in your time today and tomorrow at the latest to get your responses submitted. Great. That's all I had from my end. Anna, I'll give a brief introduction of Anna. You can pick up and give a more detailed one from yourself. So today, Anna is representing the OHDSI vocabulary team. She also represents a OHDSI collaborator called Odysseus Data Services in the United States. And today she will be giving us a talk on titled Community Contribution to the OHDSI Standardized Vocabularies. And she'll also cover some of the questions that have been coming up from the community on how to maybe, you know, for example, get new vocabularies on the OHDSI vocabularies. What vocabularies are fit to be in the OHDSI vocabularies versus what is not, and stuff like that. So Anna, over to you. Would you like me to keep sharing, or will you take the screen from me?
Yeah, I think I will take the screen just so that I can switch between slides easily. Thanks so much for the introduction and for having me here. I know that's been quite a challenge in my, just give me a second, my screen is behaving and something is happening, and yeah, hopefully you hear me.
Yeah, we see your full screen now.
Good. So I know it's been a challenge generally with the schedules and with the goals, with the overall goals being in not that convenient time zone for you guys. So I very much appreciate that you invited me to give a talk with the time that is more convenient to you, because definitely we need to work on some sort of dissemination and communication methods that would work for everybody, since we have such a big community across different time zones. Now, with that being said, what I will talk about today is specific community contribution to the OHDSI vocabularies. Now, I also should say that over the year, over 2023, we've been trying really hard to make everything about the vocabularies more transparent, more robust, more easily accessible. And in case you have any sorts of questions, of course, you can ask them here in this call, but you can also come to the vocabulary working group calls, or shoot me an email, or write on forums, and we'll try to make it as easy for you as possible to get whatever the answers you need to get regarding the vocabularies. Now, to give you and something is, let me just do it this way. Let me not, I don't know how it's shown on your screen, but let me do it this way. I hope that my computer does not crash. Anyway, so what we did in the beginning of the year, to give you some sort of introduction and idea of why we're even discussing that at this call, is we tried to figure out what are the major pain points about the vocabularies in the community, because we know that everybody used them. Yeah.
We're still on the first page. I mean, we're still on the title page. Is it supposed to be on the title page?
No. Let me see.
Should I make sure?
Oh, stop sharing. Oh, here we go. Yeah. I was looking at the different screen.
Now
yeah, thanks so much, Maureen. So in the beginning of the year, we decided that we really need to focus more on the major pain points regarding vocabularies, because everybody in the community uses them, right? So what we did is we conducted this landscape assessment, trying to get the problems that users face, the challenges that they have, and also get an idea about the vocabularies that are most commonly used across the community. And we got almost 200 responses, which of course is much smaller than the overall community, but still quite good to make us feel good about the coverage of the survey. So we got almost 200 responses from a variety of institutions, and we also captured the information about the vocabulary usage in the data sources. And Asia Pacific region was represented as well. And basically what we learned is, first of all, the community usually feels pretty good about the vocabularies, but also there are common problems that people face. Now, I will not go into too much discussion about the challenges, but this report is published on Microsoft Teams. And if you want to look into that or add your comments, it's there in the vocabulary subgroup. It's fully accessible. Now, we also got the list of the most commonly used vocabularies, so that we can prioritize our effort towards those vocabularies that are most commonly used. And you can see the list of them on your screen, and the roadmap that we built that is on the vocabulary GitHub Wiki represents those vocabularies. So we decided to focus our specific attention on the vocabularies that are most commonly used across the community. But of course, now the question pops up, what do we do with all of the vocabularies that are used by somebody, but not that commonly? To accommodate that, we came up with this pipeline for community contribution. So in a nutshell, community contribution is designed to support the needs of the users who request vocabularies that are not on the roadmap. Maybe you need something, a new vocabulary. Maybe you want to add changes to the vocabularies that are not on the roadmap. Maybe you want to update them. Anything can happen. For that, we decided to design and build this pipeline. And it is rolled out in two parts. The first part effectively is done is finished this August with this first release where we introduced that. And now we're slowly moving towards part two. And the first part focuses on the use cases that can be incorporated through the templates. So what we want to achieve is a very low bar so that anybody, even those who do not have any experience with SQL, say, or coding or programming languages, still can see the changes that they want to incorporate or their vocabularies that they want to incorporate in the system without, having a special expertise or experience. And for that, we built the pipeline that involves creating the issue on GitHub, filling the templates, and then submitting them. And I will talk about that later on. But let's first talk about the use cases that we're currently supporting. These use cases can be split into two buckets. The first bucket is adding new content, which means that you want to add something that does not exist in the vocabularies yet. The second bucket is modifying existing content, which basically means that you want to change something that already is in the vocabularies. When we talk about adding new content, you can think of, well, I have a new vocabulary that I use in my data, but this vocabulary is not in Odyssey vocabularies. I can add that. I may want to add that. Or maybe I want to add synonyms. For example, SNOMED only has English and something else, and I want to add synonyms in my native language. That would be another type of use case. Or maybe I want to add new mappings. For example, there are some terms that you use in your source data that are non-standard but are not mapped to the standard. You may want to add mappings for those. Now, when we move to the modifying existing content, that would, as I say, concern all of the changes in the existing content. So think, I found an error in the mappings. I want to fix that. Or maybe I found the concept in SNOMED that has a weird domain that I don't like. You can change that as well. Or maybe there is a non-standard term that you want to be used as a standard for your ETL. You may ask for that as well. That would be the bucket or the modifying content. And I see Mui having her hand up. Sure.
I want to probably wrap this into use cases that make sense on this side, right? So you're adding new content would be, for example, I know in China, Fudan University is looking at creating potentially translations for more codes, right? Like the SNOMED codes and all those other codes that would fit into your use case number one, right? Which is adding new content, right? Your use case number two is more of, for example, I think in the Singapore chapter, they're talking about potentially adding non-standard mapping, right? So national codes in Singapore to standard codes. That would fall under your use case number two, right? The one on the right.
That would be still number one, because that's adding new mappings. Okay. Adding new mappings. But in case you found, for example, that's a very common use case. For example, you found an error in ICD-10 to SNOMED mapping. That would be use case number two. Okay, so in most of APAC, at least all the work that I know that's going on, most of them would not be your scenario two. It would be scenario one. Yeah, because we got like potentially, right, countries like India looking at adding mapping, Singapore looking at adding mapping, China adding in translation and mapping. Those would all be on the left. So those could be all done by a community, doesn't require the vocabulary team to review at all. Yeah, I will actually touch on that as we talk about the contributions that were made for this release. I will talk about this as well. So I know we have
for the 35 minutes left, can I ask that we focus a bit more on use case 1, because that's where
Yes.
probably most of
Yes.
the interest is here, right?
Yes.
So unless somebody
Yes.
else on the call feels differently, most of our use cases in APAC fits under use case 1, the one on the
Yes.
left.
Mm-hmm.
The
Yeah,
left
I
and right.
will. My last slide, spoiler. My last slide is looking at adding new vocabulary. So that would be number 1. Yes.
Cool. Thank you.
But I also want to say that if you have any kind of use case, regardless of what it is, you can always create a GitHub issue, and you don't have to think it through or put too much effort into that. You can just create an issue, indicate what you want, and indicate what you're trying to achieve. And then we can work together with that and see what are the best ways, to meet your need. And in fact, if you go and create the issue even before you start working, that's even better, because we can also help out with designing whatever you want to achieve, or maybe help them with the advice, or maybe there's somebody else who's working on the same problem and we can connect you guys. So I would suggest that in case you have any problem, question, request, comment, concern, anything related to vocabularies, you can always create an issue in Vocabulary GitHub. But for these groups of use cases, we actually have the pipelines. Now, the pipeline looks as follows, as if you look at the broad strokes. As I said, you first would want to create an issue on our Vocabulary GitHub. And what we're trying to do this year is actually to consolidate all of the information about vocabularies on Vocabulary GitHub in Wiki section. So in case if something is not necessarily clear, Wiki would be the place to go to find more information. And the link I provided in the bottom is, hopefully that's the right link, for our GitHub Wiki that points you to the community contribution description. So you would first create the issue. And as I said, it doesn't have to be thought through issue. It can be very naive, basic description of your need or what you're trying to achieve. Then when you create the issue, it will give you the options of adding new content, modifying content, or just creating a bug. So you would select the option that fits you best. And then the website will direct you to a description of the full process. So everything that you see on the slide will also be on the GitHub issue once you create it. The next step would be to choose the template that corresponds to your use case. And we have the templates that have the use case literally in their names. So if you want to add the vocabulary, you will be looking for the template that says adding new vocabulary. And I will show it to you later on, but literally the names of the templates correspond to the use cases. And the templates are essentially Excel spreadsheets that have the tables that you would need to fill. Also a spreadsheet for the metadata, asking you institution name, date, and so on and so forth. And it also has the checklist. And the checklist is quite important because this is how we ensure that the content of your submission aligns with the quality checks that we have in place for the vocabularies. So it checks that it doesn't break any constraints, that it doesn't exceed word limit, and so on and so forth. So in filling the templates, I would say the checklist and looking at the checklist is very important. You would fill those templates, you would then submit them to the Google Drive, and the links are again in the GitHub issues. And if the review is needed, then we will come back to you, we will discuss it together. And if there are any modifications that need to be done, we will do them together. Otherwise, your submission will go through directly into release. And you will see that in the next release if it's submitted 2 months prior to the release date. So for the August release, it was end of June. The next vocabulary release is February. So for that, the end date would be end of November. But if you do not make it into this timelines, then it will be transferred into another release. But basically, the rules are as simple as that. If your submission is submitted, reviewed, and approved at least 2 months before the release, February is the next release, muy yes, then it will be incorporated. And muy yes.
How many releases do you guys have in a year? It seems like 2. So 1 in August
2.
and 1 in February.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So for any changes, basically end of the quarter, right? End of the half year, end of June and end of December is when if we want to make any changes, we either get it in by the end of December or the end of June.
Yes.
Okay.
End of December. Yes.
So end of
November.
For the community. So however you guys are scheduling these, right? If you can get it in by this December, great. If you can't, then you're shooting for June of next year.
Do you make ad hoc changes, or is it always end of February and end of June?
Right now we have the roadmap till August 2024, so a year from now. And I think we will keep this cadence.
Okay.
So the release is going to be August, February. Now, we are trying, and we should build better pipelines. So maybe this time will shrink, but at least for the next release, it's going to be December, end of December. And then hopefully we'll come up with a better pipelines that would decrease this time.
So the history around this, just so everybody knows, right, why they stick with the June, they're sticking with the June and the December date is, in the past, the releases have been very random, right? There was no systematic way, and there was a lot of feedback to the vocabulary team that you guys aren't being a typical enterprise software type of, group that's following a standard release, right? Because if you do normal software development or product development, you have standard releases, right? So what the team this year has decided to do is they're going to try that. So that's why they're trying it, and they're doing it in a half a year basis to get the process down, get the flow going. And if then we need to, then you can go down to the quarterly, right? But again, you have to develop that process and that practice before we can go. So we went from extremely no process to now having some kind of process in place, and we'll slowly refine it where necessary. So just to give you guys the background on why, we're sticking to the 2 releases and not going to do something extra.
And if you have any complaints, our very much beloved Mui is on the committee that governs all of these initiatives. So you can always complain to her.
Yes, you just complain to me, and I'll get up at 5 a.m. and make sure that voice gets said. It is that 5 a.m. call I'm talking about, okay?
Yeah, all of the sacrifices made for good community. And that this slide essentially gives you the screenshots of the things that I was talking about. So the very first screenshot, so that I do not go back and forth from GitHub to slides and slides to GitHub. The first screenshot is the left-right, is the one that shows you the type of issues. As you go into the GitHub, there's going to be those 3 types of issues, and then you can select the one that fits you better. And then on your right side, you see an example of when you start an issue. In the body of the issue, you will have all of the instructions pointing you to the documentation on the Wiki GitHub, pointing you to the templates and describing the process, essentially what I just described yet again. And then if you click on the folder with the templates, templates are stored on the Google Drive, both the templates, the unfilled templates and the templates of people who filled something already. And you can see that there are 7 of them, and their names directly correspond to the use case that you might have. For example, the first template is if you want to add a concept, or template number 4 that I will talk into more details about is adding a new vocabulary. Or template number 6 is changing the mappings that you don't like. And I see Mui again, so
template number 2 is probably the one that people are also interested in. So and template number 2 is where the synonyms is where you add the translation. So those that have a different writing besides English, template number 2 is where the translations would go. So the synonyms would show. Synonyms equal translation as well. Local language, I should say. I'm turning you off because when I'm not talking to you, I'm actually running.
You are. That's nice.
There's a treadmill underneath me, so yes.
That is, I should adopt that. Yeah, actually, template number 2, if you want to add other languages, it's quite simple. So maybe we can, if we have time, we can look into that as well. So hopefully, when you start this, all of the different places will guide you to the documentation and to the templates. So if you go straight to documentation, you will see the links to templates. If you go to GitHub issues, you will see the templates and documentation and so on and so forth. And I wanted to, talk a little bit about our experience so far, just to give you an idea of what people have been contributing over the past couple of months. So we started this we officially announced that we are collecting contributions in May. So it's been May, June, July, August, 5 months. Over 5 months, we collected 11 contributions. And in fact, I think that most of the contributions have been done by people from the US. I don't know how to interpret it honestly, but it seems to be the case. And maybe this is the reason why we have not seen too many addition of new content cases. So we only saw so far addition of 2 non-standard vocabularies, and then the rest is either changes in the content, think bugs in mappings, or complex cases. For example, people are interested in building new hierarchies or creating new standard terms that would fall into the complex category that is not currently supported through the templates, but we're still working with them to make it happen. So again, just to reiterate, even if you feel that you have a use case that does not fit the buckets that I showed you, you still can create the GitHub issue and we will work with you to incorporate it somehow in the vocabularies. But so far it's 11, and 4 of the contributions were submitted and approved until the end of June, and they made it all the way into this August release. And I see Mui again.
I think for the APAC side, it's because one, in the US, some of these things are probably a lot easier to do, right? Because you got Usagi, you got a lot of tools that helps, right? But on the APAC side, we're taking a lot of these guys are doing brand new mappings or spending a lot of time on the translation. So those are going to be a lot bigger of an effort, right? Like if you take all of the OMOP vocabulary, trying to translate all that in Chinese, that's going to take quite a bit, right? Or take the entire Singapore's drug coding system and map that to, standard. That's going to take a lot bigger of an effort than probably what's going on in the US. I'm not trying to diminish what they do, but it's just, that's why you probably don't see any of the contributions on this side yet, And that's why we want you to come here and talk to us about it so that we can figure out how we can, as a community, start doing more contribution, right?
Yeah, yeah, and it was not a criticism of any
Oh,
sort.
no, I know. I
was more pointing out at that there is lack of visibility into what different groups are doing. And we would love to get just a better understanding of what different institutions, groups, and parts of the world are trying to achieve. Yeah.
So can I ask a question probably for the folks that are on this call, right? So as I mentioned, there are multiple groups that I know that are on this call that are looking at starting this stuff. So should they be telling you that they're starting it so at least you're aware of what's going on, and if they can then need help, they can reach out? Or should we just keep it within APAC, and then when we're ready, we tell you guys? How is it that how would the vocabulary team want us to communicate with them?
I think that the benefit of describing what you want to do early is if we have somebody we know who's working on the same problem, or maybe we've done something in that space, either proprietary or we just happen to know about the existing solutions, we can share this knowledge with you. So I think this is the largest benefit of just indicating that you want to do something early. Other than that, people who are doing the work, we should make all the conditions of work for them so that it's easier for whoever's doing the work, to spend less time and effort on that. So we're trying to be as accommodative as possible and find the ways to work efficiently together on something. So if you feel that you first want to process it or do initial feasibility or what have you, that is totally up to you. But as I said, the benefit of indicating that early is that we can share our knowledge.
Thank you.
And that, in fact, this is what happened with these 4 contributions that were incorporated in this August release. And in case you don't know, it's been 6 days already that new release is out there in Athena. But what happened with these 4 contributions? This slide shows you these contributions, and it's actually GitHub issues that point to the templates. So if you want to look into them and look into their templates, you can do that as well, just to get a feeling of how it should be done or an inspiration. They're out there, and you can look at their templates and how they filled them. And as I said, out of these 4 contributions, 2 contributions are adding new non-standard vocabularies. And the vocabularies that were requested were new races and new place of service. That was 2 contributions. Another contribution was changing mappings, because somebody found a bug in the ICD-10 CM to SNOMED mapping, and they contributed their new improved mappings, how they see it. So that was another contribution. And then finally, the last contribution was adding new drug terms to support a local drug system in Netherlands. And with all of this, what we found is that with all of these contributions, except for changing mappings, we had a lot of conversations with the contributors on how it should be done, clarifying some of the things, clarifying not only the process, but also the content, helping them out with thinking about design of new vocabularies or mappings or new drug terms. So in fact, with each of these contributions, it wasn't like they built something, they put it on the GitHub, and now it's done. With all of these, we had to go back and forth talking about the content and having, in fact, meaningful conversations about how to best implemented in the vocabulary so that everybody can use it, so that it's easy to use, and so on and so forth. And this is specifically why I stress and highlight the benefit of creating your issue early, because it seems that there will be some conversations involved. And if you start it early, then obviously you don't waste your time on doing something that you will then need to change. Now I'm looking at the time. I have 15 minutes, so that sounds good. But nevertheless, within 1 month, we were able to go back and forth with all these contributors, polish it so that it's publishing great, and put it into the release. So at least we know that the pipelines are working. And the next steps are really, as I said, is to either submit a GitHub issue on the Odyssey Vocabulary version 5 GitHub, or if your use case is not supported, then just talk to us. It can be a vocabulary working group call, it can be email to Mui, it can be email to us, it can be posted on the forums, whatever method works for you better. And as I said, all of the documentation is on the vocabulary GitHub wiki, including the community contribution as shown on this slide. And I will post the link in the chat as well, just to make sure.
Or another method is that we use this call, right? This community scientific forum on the APAC side. We can bring Anna back when you guys have enough questions, then we can bring Anna back to actually answer all those questions. Right. If you guys, because the vocabulary meeting is, I think it was today, right? Or it's yesterday. That thing is like at 1 or 2 a.m. these guys' time. So that's not going to work very well.
Yeah.
So I think if we can bring, if you guys have questions as you guys start working on it, we collect them. And if we get enough of them, then we can bring Anna back to one of the, either the community call or the scientific forum, and she can, you know, walk through the answers with us.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I see another hand raised.
Yeah. So Anna, Song here. I just wanted to interrupt because I wanted to give Georgina here some chance to talk, because she's posted a few questions in the chat. Hi, Georgina. Would you want to ask the questions yourself?
Yeah, sure. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I've just peppered the chat with a bunch of questions because I have had a few items that I wanted to think through. One of them is probably a little bit esoteric, so I'll leave that for the end around licensing. But out of the APAC symposium recently, there was a bunch of discussion across the Australian chapter around our really specific way of handling Indigenous status. And there was some talk about, you know, there's been chat in the forums on and off in the past about requesting that to be added, and I think there's been a global pushback on like not really understanding that use case. We do, as a chapter, have a very specific and prescribed way of doing that, and so we wanted to make a proposal that perhaps is a slight superset to a vocabulary submission, because it probably has to include a few things around like you know, conventions as well. And I have been in touch with Atif about presenting that to the equity group as well, perhaps as like a cohesive proposal. So just wanted to, like, I would assume that that probably needs to sit outside of the GitHub submission route because of that kind of cross-pollination between the groups.
Well, that would, I've been following the discussion. I remember it from the APAC symposium A and B. I've been following the discussion in the forums. Technically that does fall within these two buckets of use cases, because what you actually want to do is to add a term that represents a certain race or ethnicity as the standard term. So the way,
actually not exactly, because the way that we do it at the moment, the race and ethnicity fields are held within the person table, but the way that we do it in terms of linked data, you know, it's quite different to the way it's done in the US, I think, where there's things like tribal enrollment, and you kind of think that there's a canonical category for each individual, and it's very much done at the person level. But actually there's more of an algorithmic consideration where there's multiple data sources here, and often studies will have different algorithms that they apply. So say, for example, you have like an administrative data set and a hospital data set and a bunch of other linked data, and a person is identified differently across different ones. Some studies will take, if they have ever self-identified as Indigenous, as a yes. Some will say it has to be the majority. Some will say there's like some hierarchy of faithfulness of the data sources, and it will apply some other. So it doesn't actually fit in the person table. It's actually kind of our proposal is to perhaps come up with an observational domain to support that instead. So there's a bunch of other kind of conventions associated with it that isn't just vocabulary.
I mean, yeah, well, let me put it this way. If you need in this complex system of creating new conventions and maybe adding new fields or modifying the conventions that we already have, if you happen to need new terms, then it probably would be done. It would be done through the community contribution, but the review, like, let's say you want to create new standard terms, that you can definitely do that through the templates. The step that is needed is the approval of not even the vocabulary team, but of the corresponding working group or team, which in this case probably will be CDM working group. So I would probably start with the conventions, and then when conventions are in place, we can totally create the issue and fill the templates and do what's needed on the vocabulary side. But the
my main concern is just checking, because it looks like that there have been a couple of people going for this, and I would say that some people have made requests that I could say fairly confidently don't represent local best practice in the like, let's just add a term kind of way. And could we like put a blocker on those, just saying that we're coming with like a chapter-wide recommendation that is, you know, with participation from affected communities and all this kind of stuff. And so just making sure that everyone's aware, please don't just add a term at this point. Is that... I don't want to be like, I want to be someone else's roadblock, but at this point,
well,
it's better to not have that happen and do it properly.
It makes total sense. And that's because this is exactly the reason why we placed this additional restriction on modifying existing content, and creating standard terms falls into this category, specifically because we want to make sure that there are no different views on the topic in the community, that there was consensus reached. We can, I think that would probably fit a CDM working group better, but if you send me an email, we can set up a call so that different people can come and discuss this issue in more detail, because like forums are nice, but usually you need a separate call to actually discuss this stuff.
So maybe I put some very long forum posts and have had no replies, so I'm just easier to go straight to the source in this case.
That happens to all of us. Yeah, so I think the way to go here would be to send an email to myself or Claire Blacketer, and go with the CDM/vocabulary working group call that is specifically dedicated to this problem.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Thank you. And the other question that I had was about licensing of external vocabularies. So I've done some conversion of the Australian procedure codes, which is MBS, into custom terms that I expect would be quite useful for people. I'd be very happy to contribute it, but it's unclear how those terms are licensed. And I've approached people and tried to ask around, and it kind of got too hard, and it's not, you know, a priority because I've got them. It was just like whether I could contribute them or not. Do you have someone who's expert in handling things like that? Like I know CPT has a kind of a quirky licensing situation as well.
We can look into that.
So to answer that one, so to answer that one, right? We don't actually. So if you think it requires a license, what we do in the vocabulary is when you download it, we put a little tag that says license required. And when the license is required and somebody requested, the vocabulary team will ask them to prove that they have the license.
Okay.
In order to download it. So like CPT, it's the same way, right? Or like in the United States, the FDBs and the GPIs, they're mapped to OMOP. And if you go to in Athena, you can see they're selectable, but you'll see next to it says license required, right? So in order to pick it, when you do that, it sends a little note to say request sent, and then somebody, because when you logged in, your email address would have been given. Right, they will say, hey, you need to, we need to have you show proof that your organization has license to this vocabulary before we can allow you to download it. So we don't maintain those licenses because those are within the corporations and everything, right? But if we know it requires a license, then we will update that to put that in there, and then we require you to validate that you have a license.
Okay. It was more about the fact that just there is no clarity around what license would be required in this particular case.
Oh, that
and like know. even the act of creating a derivative work is like it's not clear to me, and I haven't been able to get a straight answer on it.
Got it. That would be within the local folks.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's how the
this is what I meant to say is that, well, you can shoot us an email and we will see if there is anything we can Google additionally in terms of the licensing. But yeah, otherwise it's what we described.
Yeah.
No, we have
typically the local people with the knowledge, we wouldn't, right? So like nobody here would know unless you're in the US that GPI requires a license and you have to go through a certain organization, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I have 5 minutes, and I think that's going to be enough to go through one of the templates, which is synonyms, which seems to be the...
Before you move on, so my question is, Anna, given the interest in this, and like you said, we only have 5 minutes left, and you can probably show this one. Can we ask you to come back?
Yeah.
And show the other ones? Because again, I think the teams are going to be very interested in all the templates and how they work. Can we come back and show each template and how it works so that then the team knows how to do this?
Yep, absolutely. Well, what should have been done is we should have created a short videos about each template. Don't point at us for not doing so, but that definitely should be done. So yeah, we can have a separate, we can go back to all of the templates. And if you have use cases for them, we can even look at your specific use case and try to fill them together. Now,
so Anna, here's how we can help you. Okay. On that note, right? We're going to ask you to come back. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
So you're going to do it as if you're doing the record, right? And we will cut it out for you so that we'll send it back to the vocabulary team.
Okay, so I need to dress up nicely.
Taking out 2 birds in 1 stone, right? You showing us how the templates work, and we help you record it, cut it up, and you can have it back as your tutorial. Deal?
Sounds good. It sounds good. I feel that you don't want to squish another template into this 5 minutes, which is a fair game.
If you can squish a template into here, you just have to redo it so that we can record it later on again.
Well, actually, you know, this one is really basic.
Yes, please.
It's like as basic as it gets. And this template is specifically to adding synonyms, which assumes that you have a concept in SNOMED, for example, or another vocabulary, and you, for example, want to add
a local term. Did Anna just
really has only...
Oh, there she comes back.
It really has one table that you need to fill that essentially specifies the name, the synonym or translation that you want to add, the code of the concept that you want to add translation for, the vocabulary, and the ID of the language in the Odyssey vocabularies. So this ID is English language, this ID is Spanish language, and these are the synonyms or translations of this SNOMED term. And this is the example, and you would fill the template according to the example. So I think it doesn't get any easier than that. The name, the code, and the vocabulary. And
where do we get the language concept idea? I mean, the English one I understand, that's from SNOMED, right? But where do I get the Spanish one from?
Yeah, you would do domain language, right? Because you're looking at language, and you always want to do standard concept, because you always want to do standard concept. And now you have all sorts of languages in SNOMED.
So for example,
so if you want to
can find Chinese.
Let me not standard. Let me not hope that SNOMED has it. SNOMED should have it. No, Chinese language. Here you go, and also Chinese Sign Language. So that the ID would be the ID for this.
So can you go back to the template, because I'm trying to figure out. So the so that Chinese code, right? That one, yeah. If you can copy that, going back to your template, right? So for example, if I had, let's just pretend it's that care of patient of diabetes. That's the code, right? That's the title. But is that where I would put my Chinese? Just put 1, 2, 3.
Yes.
Right? Let's put 1, 2, 3. Right.
Yes.
I can't type the Chinese character. And then that would be the code. Yeah. And then that, what you're saying is this is the Chinese translation of that particular.
Of that code. Yeah.
Of that code.
So, question, Anna, so can we only add synonyms for codes, or can we add synonyms for concept IDs as well? It's just codes, right?
This is concept IDs.
No, it's concept code so it's
yeah,
not
but
it's
the code and the vocabulary, so that equals an ID.
Okay, I'm confused now.
If you look at this, so this is the SNOMED term that says diabetic care. This is a standard procedure in SNOMED vocabulary. Correct. It has ID that starts with 42. Correct. And code starts with 38.
Correct.
So in the template, we have the code and the vocabulary, so that we can identify this term. And in the synonym name, you're going to put the name. And now realize that, yes, even this easy template is taking time. So I definitely should come back.
Yes, it would have been the concept ID, would have been the simpler one, but the code and the vocabulary combined makes it unique. So it's as if it's the ID. So. Right.
How come there's no concept ID column here? I'm
That's
asking.
What I said. They now realize that they are a little stupid, that they should have done the ID. Is what Anna's trying to say.
I'm pretty sure there's a reason it's designed this way, right? So I'm just trying to understand. Yeah.
The reason why it's done this way, because we're mimicking the structure of the intermediate tables that we use in our development.
I see that you used to populate okay, got it.
And in our development, let's say you want to add a new term. This term does not have an ID yet. What it has, it only has code and the vocabulary. So all of the intermediate tables in our development process are based on the codes and vocabularies, not on the ID, because ID does not exist yet.
Got it.
So on that note,
any questions before we drop? I know we're 2 minutes over. For those who are trying to create synonym, trying to do like translations, right? This is the template you would use. Any questions on how to populate that template?
Hi, can I ask a question?
Yes, of course. Yes.
Get back to the Excel.
Mm-hmm.
So we're only provide the Chinese code, right? We don't need to provide one piece Chinese, one piece English together.
No, you will only need to provide something that you want to add, which is going to be Chinese. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
So there's going to be.
So column Chinese. A would be your Chinese word, right? So 这个就是那个这个中文的那种 word, right? And then this is the code. So whatever the ICD-10 CN code is. Right. And then under the vocabulary, you would put ICD-10 CN.
Yeah.
right? And then under the language concept ID would always be the one that she just looked up, the Chinese, that says Chinese language.
Chinese, right.
Yes, it's
Mhm.
always gonna be that Chinese language.
Okay, but the question is, as you said, if we have a new vocabulary added,
Mm.
not in the
Yeah.
existing ones, so then we have to provide the English translation as well. Right?
No,
So
That's
no,
another template, right?
that's another
another
template.
template.
That's a
That's
different
another thing.
template.
Okay, all right, okay.
Every template is different, so we only went through one template today.
Oh,
That's why
okay.
we're asking Anna to come back so we can go over the other templates.
yeah, but yeah. You basically you have the names of the templates, and you would look for the primary use case that you have. If it's adding vocabulary, then it's going to be adding vocabulary, and we will talk about that in more details in other calls. But just a sneak peek, in adding vocabulary, we have concept synonym as well. So you can add vocabulary and synonyms simultaneously.
So it can be done at the same time if you're adding new vocabulary. Okay.
Yes, yes. So the template for adding new vocabulary can be used for adding new vocabulary, adding mappings for this vocabulary, and adding synonyms for this vocabulary. Everything in one template.
Oh,
But I
so
agree with you. Mhm.
adding vocabulary also has adding mappings as well. So we don't need to
Yeah.
fill out the other template for the mappings. It's
No.
just
No.
okay.
So again,
Yeah.
Anna, can we have you come back in 2 weeks or 4 weeks? I'm about having you come back.
Sure.
Which one? 2 weeks or 4 weeks?
Let me see.
Wait, what's in 2 weeks? I'm sorry. Am I taking over some community?
Yeah,
call?
you are. So
Damn,
Mui,
never
the
mind.
next community call is from Nicole and Tamir,
Okay.
and they're going to do a session on their multiple skills for study. So it will
Never
be in
mind. Can we
October.
have you come back in 4 weeks?
Yeah. Yes, absolutely.
I'll
Awesome.
coordinate
Of
with
course.
you, Anna, for that.
Yeah, that sounds good. And also, if we want to set up a vocabulary working group call with the time that fits you guys better, we can do that as
Good
well, because
idea.
we've been
We can do a
going through
separate one.
templates.
We would
on
love
the
that
other call.
idea. I think we can do that after we have the second call, right?
Mhm.
And start having that type of
Okay.
call. We love that idea. You can tell everybody's interested because there's still 30 people here with 6 minutes over the call. Okay. Everybody's quite interested in this topic. Anyone got any last questions before we let Anna go? Or if you do have a question and you didn't get answered, email Song and we will add it to the list for 1 month later when she comes back.
And also, if you have examples of the things you want to work on,
There we
you
go.
can also
Please.
send it to us so
Yep.
that we can actually show the examples on your use cases.
Love that idea as well. So if you guys have examples or what you want to do, let's try to get that in with Anna, and maybe we can schedule some follow-up meetings with Anna, right, to work through some of those. Then we can show it to the community in a month. So that it ties a little bit more back to what you guys are doing, right?
I have a question.
Yes.
So do we have the frequency of all the codes, like the using one? Because there are 3 million and they're not same frequencies to showing, right?
Repeat
The
that
codes
question
are-
again.
Like what kinds of code or what codes in the SNOMED like using more often than the others
We
in the data?
We have this information. So we conducted, that's slightly deviating from the topic, but still, I conducted the study on collecting the information about code utilization across different data sources in Odyssey. So I know how often SNOMED codes are used across 22 data sources.
And he's not talking
Yes.
about just SNOMED codes. He's talking about even down to
All of them.
inside SNOMED, the frequency of the codes in SNOMED, which ones are used. So try and
Yeah.
prioritize even at the
Yeah, we are
code
trying
level
to
within each
prioritize all the
vocabulary.
codes. So
Yeah,
we are doing the translations.
Yeah, within SNOMED, which codes are used more often, I have that.
Okay.
But it represents US data sources plus Australia.
Correct.
And
It's that
Korea.
exercise we did. It's that exercise we did a while ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it does not represent a lot of the new data sources from like China and other countries and Taiwan, Taipei, and all of this stuff. So we can, if you're interested, we can do this experiment together again to get more representation from APAC.
Yeah,
Because right now it's only Australia and Korea.
Because if you collect more data, it's more helpful for we do the priority because we are going to do the translations. We need to know which one is more important than the others. Otherwise, we
Take a
cannot
note of that
do this
as another
like
project.
one by one.
We will take a note of that as another project.
Yes.
Any
Thank
other,
you.
one last question if we have, or not, or else I'm gonna let Anna go to sleep because it's midnight for Anna.
I am not going to sleep.
I know, but still. Thank you, everybody. We will see you guys again. Hopefully the next one will be just as interesting.
Thanks,
Bye, everybody.
Anna.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you,
Bye,
Anna.
Anna.
Have a good day.